How's it, guys? Let's talk slow jigging real quick. In particular, jig choice, jigging hook choice. Every time that you'll enter a tackle shop, you'll be bombarded by an absolute array of these things. Shapes, colors, weights. Let's forget about colors, because to me personally, that is the least important aspect of choosing a jig. Firstly, you got to understand, do I have a fast jig or a slow jig? Fast jigs are easy. They're symmetrical on both sides. Slow jigs will be asymmetrical, meaning one side will look different than the other. It will cause a fluttering or a slow down action as the jig descends. Let's take, for instance, these two jigs. At first glance, they look very similar. But if you look closely, the one in my left hand is much wider and has a much more pronounced ridge on its top than the one in my right hand. This will affect the way this jig descends and the way it falls. Obviously, the narrower profile is going to descend through the water column faster, reaching the bottom quicker. This would be a better option in deeper water or in water that has more current. The broader, wider jig of the same weight will descend slower with a more fluttering action, staying in the zone longer. So you got to decide firstly where you're going to fish and what current you're going to fish, and then you can make an informed jig choice. Alright, so now that we've established what depth we're fishing at firstly, how strong the current is, and we've made our jig profile choice, we can go ahead and rig this jig with terminals. Firstly, what you'll need is split ring pliers. Anyone will do. Obviously, 2 split rings. As I mentioned earlier, I like to fish these longer jigs or larger jigs with 2 sets of assist hooks. If you find that you're fishing in very foul bottom and the fish are feeding very aggressively, you can remove 1 set of assist hooks to keep from getting stuck. There we go. So you'll have 2 hooks at the top and 2 hooks at the bottom. From here, you will be tying your main line onto the solid ring of your top hook set. This is the only disadvantage to fishing 2 sets. You'll only have direct contact with your top ring. Luckily, when a fish bites and let's say it grabs the bottom of the jig and it gets hooked, normally these 2 hooks will find its way into the head or mouth of a fish through the fight. So you'll have a solid connection up from your solid ring which your leader is tied to. This is critical because your split rings can be a weak point. Remember to always use rated split rings because you never know when these hooks might be your only hook set onto a good fish. Alright, let's go to attaching our jig to our leader or our main line. You'll see I already have a knot connecting onto a solid ring there, and I have a set of assist hooks on the rod. This is how I travel. So when I start my day fishing, I will start out like this. When I get to the spot that I want to fish, I'll simply unclip my assist hooks, And I'll normally have a couple of jigs, different sizes, different shapes, different styles, pre-rigged like this, so I can start fishing immediately.
One eternity later.
And that is what your final rig will look like. Main line directly to a solid ring. I like to fish a loop knot because it's just a very easy knot. It hasn't failed me yet. You can fish a figure of 8, you can fish a uni, whatever works for you. One tip I need to give you guys as well: when traveling between spots, never hook up your jig like this. Your rod's going to be sitting upright in a rod holder, and that jig is going to be banging on your blank all the way. We know that slow jig rods are very sensitive, thin blanks, and can get damaged very easily. This is also one of the reasons why we have our split ring on the top. You take your jig off, leave the split ring on your assist hook set, and then you can hook that into your hook clip or onto your reel. I would advise not hooking it onto your reel. Get yourself these little clips. Then when you get to the spot, simply unhook these, grab your jig or another jig. Let's per se we've moved shallower, we've moved to a smaller profile jig, or we know that the bottom is very foul in this specific spot, and we don't want to fish 2 sets of assist hooks. You're ready to fish your next jig or your next style of jig very, very quickly, if I can get the right split ring pliers. And there we are, ready to fish. Lastly, let's cover colors. As mentioned earlier, I personally believe the good action of a jig and a good shape are more important than the actual color of a jig. However, some days fish might be feeding on a particular bait pattern, and mimicking that bait pattern might get you that specific bite. For me, I'll always have some form of luminous jig. It just is a more in your face, very aggressive pattern, and sometimes it does work. Other days you would like a more natural pattern, like the sardine pattern with a little bit of flash on it. You're going to have to experiment with this, what works in your area, what particular bait the fish you are targeting are feeding on that day. The best thing is always to have a variety of colors, sizes and shapes of jigs in your tackle box. I hope this helped. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and let's see what we can do.